The annual roundup by Reporters Without Borders paints a bleak picture of media safety and freedom around the world. 65 journalists have been killed this year, most while working in their own countries. 326 are being detained, 54 are being held hostage, and 2 are missing. Syria remains the world's deadliest country for journalists. 12 have been killed this year reporting on the conflict. But close behind is Mexico, with 11 killed. Many journalists such as Javier Valdez Cardenas were murdered for their coverage of the drugs trade and organised crime. Most of these murders remain unpunished. Of the 54 journalists being held hostage, many are being held by armed groups such as ISIL in the Middle East. 10 women journalists were among those killed this year, compared to 5 last year. Daphne Caruana Galicia was murdered by a car bomb in Malta. Despite receiving threats, she continued to denounce alleged government corruption.
So if we look at bigger pictures of all journalists killed, this year 60% were deliberately targeted because of their work as journalists. The other 40% were killed in the field, sort of doing their jobs. But when we look at the female journalists that were targeted, nearly all of them were specifically and deliberately targeted.
Of the 326 detained journalists, more than half are being held in only 5 countries: Vietnam, Iran, Syria, Turkey, and top of the list, China, many without any solid charge. This is the case for Al Jazeera's Mahmoud Hussein, arrested in Egypt a year ago while on holiday. The detention was one of a string of arrests by the Egyptian authorities targeting Al Jazeera staff in the country. Reporters Without Borders findings are alarming, but remarkably the number of journalists killed this year is at its lowest in 14 years. Better safety training and intensive lobbying by campaign groups have helped, but in many cases the downward trend is a result of journalists simply leaving the world's most dangerous places. And in the absence of journalists, vital voices remain silent. Neave, Al Jazeera, London.